LMU. I'm also the director of the Center for Asian Business and Center for International Business Education. This program is funded by D.K. Kim Foundation, gracious benefactor of the Center for Asian Business for the past 7 or 8 years. Center for Asian Business was established in 1995 to promote better understanding, mutual understanding between the Asian countries and the U.S. through a variety of initiatives, including special lectures like this evening, and faculty support grant, and student scholarships, movie screenings, and etc. I'd like just to briefly introduce tonight's featured speaker, Mr. Sid Kim. Mr. Sid Kim is a global entrepreneur and expansion strategist with nearly 30 years of international business leadership spanning Asia and the US. As the founder of Vatos Urban Tacos, Urban Mix, Sid Burger and Craft Beer, and also the KoMari, he has launched and managed over 20 restaurants and other business ventures across Singapore, South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines, now the US. He currently serves as chairman of Vatos Capital Partners and CEO of Sage Partners, Inc., where he leads international market entry and brand expansion initiatives, helping foreign companies navigate complexities of US market and growth. He will have a fireside chat with Professor David Choi. I'm sure that LMU students, you guys all know him very well. Professor Choi, he's the Hilton Conrad Hilton Chair of Entrepreneurship, and he's a director of the Fred Kiesner Center for Entrepreneurship at LMU. He's been a faculty member at LMU since 2003, and he has taught both graduate and undergraduate EMBA programs. He's a recipient of the LMU President Fritz Buns Distinguished Teaching Award and Innovative Pedagogy Award from the U.S. Association of Small Business and Entrepreneurs.
Sid is an entrepreneur with a lot of entrepreneur lessons to share. He's an international business expert, a lot of international business lessons to share. And by the way, Sid has a doctorate in education, so I think it's going to be extremely extra educational. Okay? All right. So, Sid, I like it when our students get to know our speaker personally. So, could you start out maybe sharing where you grew up?
Okay.
And what hobbies you had? Where did you go to school?
So I was born in Korea, in Seoul, a long time ago. Not quite as long as Professor Choi, but
almost
as long ago, but a long time ago. And then I immigrated to the U.S. when I was 5 years old. And I went to kindergarten here, elementary school, high school, college.
You went to Catholic high school too.
Yes, I went to St. Bonaventure up in Ventura, California, so that's where we settled, my parents. Grew up there, nice little beach town north of LA. And then I went to Cal Berkeley for my undergraduate school, and I went in as a chemical engineering major, science. I had no choice, right? Asian parents. So I was supposed to go to medical school. However, I realized my second semester in organic chemistry, there was a professor, Wan T. Lee. He just won the Nobel Prize in chemistry the year before.
Perfect teacher to have, yes.
Yeah, but I was in a room with much bigger than this, maybe 500-600 people, and this guy is explaining what's in his mind, and I had no idea what he was talking about. So I said, okay, maybe this is not for me. And then I decided to change majors, and I transferred to political science and wanted to go to law school. But then after I graduated, I worked at a law firm for about a year as a clerk and realized this was not for me.
You thought like at the time you thought many attorneys were not as ethical as they should be.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything.
This is not the law school,
but
it's okay.
basically, we have no lawyers here, right? So I can, but so you have the law. Maybe today the clients are on this side of the law, so they'll bend it this way, and then the very next day the client's on this side of the law, they'll bend it that way. So they won't break the law, but they'll bend it to their needs. And I thought, well, I'm not sure if I can do this. And I had always enjoyed teaching. I was in high school. I tutored, neighborhood kids, and I even helped a couple of my classmates with their college essays. And in college, I worked and volunteered at the Bay Area Youth Center for immigrant children who came to the United States from Asia, particularly Korea, and helped them with their English and their studies and volunteered there. And so I thought, this would be great. I'll study education and have summers off and work with young kids for the rest of my life and take it easy. And but then I received a Fulbright scholarship and went to Korea to do my PhD research. And then I realized, wow, you can make money with education in Asia, right? So all these private schools, publications, you name it, these sort of extracurricular academics, right? So I think right before I was working on my PhD, finishing on my PhD, I came back to the United States, went to Barnes and Noble, and this is in 1998, 1999, so the internet was booming, probably before you guys were even born, right? At that time, the internet was brand new, and it was
height of .com.
booming, height of .com. So I went to Barnes and Noble, I kid you not, and bought a Business Plan for Dummies book. And I read through that, and just in my spare time, wrote a business plan for online educational portal in Korea. Sent it to my friends who had graduated from Berkeley. And a week later, someone calls me up and says, hey, can you fly out to San Francisco? I said, yeah, sure, why? Oh, we have some VCs and angel investors who are interested in your project. I said, what? So I flew out there, played golf with them, met with them. They're like, okay, we're in, $3 million. I said, what?
It was easy then.
Yeah, it was super easy.
At the
Crazy
time,
valuation too. I just made stuff up. So I had this idea, concept, no proof of concept, nothing, no working model, nothing, just 20 pieces of paper. And I think the valuation was something like 20 times, right? And so they said yes. And people were paying 100 times, 200 times back then. And so, oh my goodness, I'm still a student and I have millions of dollars. I guess I have to do this now. So I went back to Korea. I'd never run a business. I wasn't a business major. I wasn't an entrepreneur. I was an academic. And so right into the fire, I had to hire developers, hire marketing people, set up an office, and we did that. And we did really well, but again, the timing wasn't right. So this is 1999. Back then, the internet was free. No one paid for anything on the internet, right? And now we're trying to charge subscription for our content. And we also had quite interesting multimedia education. So we use this program called Macromedia Authorware, which is used for CD-ROMs, which was a multimedia sort of content back in the day. And we converted that to use online. So we had animations of people talking to each other, and we created a voice recognition app. And you can pick a character in the animation and record their dialogue, speak your English, right? And then it went through the app and it had to recognize your voice. The pronunciation had to be good enough where you would pass that and go to the next lessons, and you'd have to write and drag things and speak, which at the time people didn't want to do. We thought, oh, this is the way you learn English. So it was an English language website, English as a second language. And at the time, Korea, most of the English language learning was what we call mute English. So everybody knew you had to learn English. But
You want to speak?
you don't want to speak, right?
Okay.
So the way they did it is you had videos of teachers giving lectures, and you'd sit there, have teachers on a tape, and you put a tape in your car driving from work to home, and you listen to an English lesson for 30 minutes or an hour and go, oh, okay, I studied English today. But you didn't say a single word, right? There's this, so to get a job in Korea, there's a TOEIC test of English for communications or something. And the top score is, I think, around 900. So many people got 900, but then when you actually said hello to them, you shut up and run away. So I thought, oh, I'm gonna change this whole thing. I'm gonna revolutionize English learning, which I tried to do. But that was one of my first mistakes, right? When you have to understand where you are and the culture behind it. I thought I would teach them the right way to learn. I would teach them what they didn't know, what they had to learn. But I got a lot of pushback. They said, you know, first of all, you're charging me for this. Second of all, you know, I just want to do this the easy way, sit there and listen to something just so I can fulfill my obligation of having to learn English. I don't really need to communicate. I just need to get a good score on this test so I can get a job in a Korean company, right? So, yeah, so that didn't go as well as planned. And you would think that you have this great idea, it's revolutionary, it's effective as well. But since I didn't understand the Korean culture, the way people learned certain things, and what the end game was, you know, why do they need to learn English? Well, it wasn't to go out globally and communicate with foreigners at the time.
It's just to get a job.
It's just to get a job. You need that score on that test to get a job, right? So yeah, that was my first learning lesson in entrepreneurship. And plus, we launched in January of 2000, and as some of you might know, April of 2000 was when the internet bubble burst. And so all of my second round, third round, fourth round funding dried up, and then I had to spin and I had to pivot to do more content development and application development for universities and things like that. So long story short, I ended up, because of that business, staying in Korea for 19 years. Yeah.
So,
I was supposed to be there for 10 months.
Okay, 10 months.
Yeah.
And so business sort of crashed around what year?
Well, so it's kind of funny because I was in education, I had a lot of friends, a good network of friends who always asked me, hey, can you help my son get into college? Hey, can you help my daughter with her SATs? Can you help, you know, my niece with their college exam? Hey, no, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an internet startup guy, I don't have time for that, right? I'm a hotshot. But after a while, we started running out of money. And I had people coming to me and saying, hey, you know, we'll give you whatever, $5,000 if you help my son get into college. So, okay, so that would take a student or two or three, and then, like an idiot, I would, then this is, never be fully attached to your first project. Just consider it a business. I know it's really hard, it's your baby, you know, how can you throw away your baby, how can you give up on your baby, but sometimes when it's not sustainable, it financially doesn't make sense, you have to let go. And people who hold on too long, sometimes they don't recover from that, right? So, but anyway, so what I did is I would take this money and put it into the business. And I got an office and I started what in Korea is called a hagwon, which is a private academy, cram school. I had 3 or 4 classrooms in the front, and in the back I had a big room with all my developers, right? All my software engineers and web designers. I hid them back there. And so I'd have these leaders of industry, CEOs of big companies and celebrities and members of big Korean conglomerates come to me and say, oh, please, can you help my son, can you help my daughter? Here's a big lot of cash, you know, $5,000, $10,000. And I would just stupidly put that into my company. For my company, we had to pivot. And I said, because the online portion wasn't doing so well, we had to pivot. We're doing a lot of app and content development for big universities. I set up the learning management system for WEDE, Korean University of Foreign Studies, the Cyber University for Sejong University, things like that. Daegyo, which is one of the big education companies in Korea, we created content for them. And so we would get thrown $50,000 project, $100,000 project. I'd have to go to big companies and wine and dine and meet and beg with, you know, assistant managers to try to get these projects so I can survive. And then these heads of industries are coming to me and begging me to help them. And I was like, okay, there's something wrong here. And finally, I came to my senses and I said, hey, you know what? This isn't working anymore. So luckily, I was able to sell the company for a little bit of money. Not as much as I spent, unfortunately, but we still had some assets there. And then I focused full time on the private education market.
What year was that about?
This was in 2001.
Okay.
So the internet company I ran for 2 years. 2001, end of 2001, so about almost 3 years. And I set up the private education company. It was called Wise Education, and we focused on SAT, AP prep, subject test, academic consulting, and then it all culminated with admissions consulting. So we helped them with their essays and strategies, all of those things.
It's kind of interesting. So you never like wanted to become an entrepreneur. That was not one of your goals.
They threw money at me. That's
Yeah,
why.
that's what I'll do it. And then now you fly to Korea. You work there, and then you didn't want to come back at this point. You just
No, I did. Yeah. Well, Korea back in the 90s was also pretty fun. I was single back then, and it was. I wouldn't have minded staying there, but for a little while longer. But I never envisioned staying there for 19 or 20 years. Right. So I had thought, obviously, finish my research, come back, get my PhD, and get a job at a university here in the United States. And then I started teaching in Korea as well at university there. But yeah, I think I was kind of deer in the headlight moment, right? So I was not, like I said, you guys are studying, you have this great program here. You're studying to be an entrepreneur or a business person. I had none of that training. I had no desire to be a businessman. Most people told me, oh, you're too nice. You can't be a business, you can't go into business. You have to be cutthroat. No, I can do it. But, and I guess for me, it was kind of like what crypto is now and what AI is now. It feels like, if I don't try something right now, I'm gonna miss the boat entirely, and all these people are becoming multi-millionaires from doing AI and crypto. So I just tried. I bought that book and wrote a business plan, and they said, here's $3 million. So now, that's when it hit me, and I said, oh my goodness, I have to actually do a business now. But yeah, I think if I had studied business a little bit more, or even considered it at all, and gone to lectures like this to hear some of the experiences of businessmen, and learn from professors like you, I probably would have done better. But as an academic at the time, an academic's mind is also very different. They have an idea of what's right, or what's the fact, or what's the truth based on the literature. And this is the right way you should learn. This is the right way you should do it. And I'm going to teach you all, this entire country, the right way to learn from the internet.
And everybody should want it.
Yeah.
So after you sold your tech company, you could have still come back, but you chose to stay and started this other education company.
Yes.
Right? Why did you do that?
Well, initially it was because I was trying to earn money to fund the internet company and sort of transition to that. And then that got really big, and it did really well. And when it got to its peak, I had probably a good 20 or 30 teachers under me. And during the summers, we had anywhere from 400 to 500 students, and about 40 to 50 who would enroll in our admissions consulting program. So that was my, specialty, my admissions consulting, getting them into college. And so we had 40 or 50 who would enroll in that, and the results were really good, and because of that, more people would come. So that's what happened. So I did that for about, I don't even know, 12 years, 10 to 12 years. It was really good to me. And in between, I had stints in broadcasting. So EBS, which is Educational Broadcasting System, one of the bigger network, one of the 4 big networks in Korea. Because I was in education, they contacted me to do a radio show. So I did that for quite a few years, and it became the #1 radio show on EBS.
Actually, thinking about it, you have a good voice.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So I did that for a while. Did a news program for a while on TBS EFM, which is the first English language broadcasting system in Korea. So I did that, a culture show. But that was sort of a side hustle for me. I just enjoyed
Yeah.
doing those things. My main thing was an educational company. And through that, I started a publishing company where I wrote a lot of books for other private education firms as well as schools in Korea. And then, like I wasn't doing enough, I started a restaurant.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's where I am now. That's what got to me where I am now. So, at the time, but this was back in 2010, 9, 10 in Korea, there wasn't any good Mexican food in Korea.
Right.
It was bad. You go eat to a Mexican restaurant, you order nachos, and they give you a bag of chips with like cheese sauce,
Yeah.
and Tabasco. That was it.
And
That
it was
was
very
it.
expensive. And
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah.
So, I worked all through high school and college and grad school. I worked in restaurants all my life, basically, part-time, earning money, which I think is also a great way for business people to actually work, whether it's part-time in different industries, doesn't matter, just to see how a business runs. But yeah, I worked for literally 12 years in restaurants as a server, as a cook, as a bartender, as a cashier, cleaning, bathrooms, washing dishes, you name it. I did it all. And I never thought of it as a career though. I just thought it was a part-time job to help me pay for college and grad school. But I always thought in the back of my mind when I retire, when I'm in 60 years old, I'd love to open up a restaurant, a small one, in my hometown and just hang out there. I don't know if you guys know Rocky Balboa, but when he retired, he opened a restaurant. He goes and tells his stories about
Rocky Five.
And he's telling all these stories. And I thought that was like the perfect retirement for me. Go around, tell my stories, meet people, because I love meeting people and talking, socialize with the customers. But again, that was like after retirement. I have to build a career, make enough money, and do that. But then a couple of friends of mine got together and said, you know what, there's really no good Mexican option here. Let's do it ourselves. And I had the business background, obviously. These guys were younger than me, so they can do the operations. So I put in most of the money, but we pulled our money and then we started Vatos Urban Tacos. And a small back alley in Itaewon, which is a sort of foreigner-ish neighborhood of Seoul, Korea. And we didn't know what to expect, but we did know that we wanted to do Korean Mexican food. And that was one of the smartest moves I've ever made. Instead of doing traditional Mexican food, because at the time, of course, here in LA, there's great traditional Mexican food. OG Mexican food everywhere. So if you open up a really good traditional Mexican food place, it's gonna do well. But in Korea, there's nothing to compare it with. And we thought, okay, how are we gonna get Koreans to try good Mexican food? And how do we do that? How do we localize it enough without losing the authenticity? And we thought, okay, at the time, Choi was getting really popular here, getting a lot of press with the Kogi taco trucks, and so let's do that. But we'll do a big sit-down, full-service restaurant, and we'll put our tweaks into it. And so we did that. We had kalbi tacos, we had bulgogi quesadillas, and our famous dish was the kimchi carnitas fries, which was it sounds kind of weird, but it was literally a combination of all our cultures. And I think that's why it worked. So we had seasoned fries, and on top of that, we had carnitas, shredded carnitas, and on top of that, we had sauteed kimchi with cheese, sour cream, our own hot sauce, cilantro, onions, and you eat the whole thing all in one bite. And you had the French fries, which are an American staple. You had the carnitas, which is Mexican, and the sauteed kimchi, which is Korean. And so somehow it worked, and people loved that combination. And so we became famous for that. CNN did a story on us, New York Times came out with a story on us, Wall Street Journal, you name it.
Actually, this is actually one of the later locations, right?
And that's the Itaewon location. So we were in a small alley, maybe 30 seats, and within the first month we had 3-hour waits. And at that time, we didn't have an app, call me or how much time I had left. No, you had to wait in line. And if you left the line, you lost your place in line. So people waited 3 hours every night. These were the good old days, pre-pandemic.
But John Kerry.
Yeah, John Kerry came out to our restaurant. So They shut down the whole restaurant for him. He was a really nice guy though.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we did that, and then within 9 months, we're like, we gotta expand. We have to move. So from maybe a 1,200 square foot space, we moved across to this space. This is about 8,000 square feet within 9 months.
Well, knowing I've been to this place.
Yeah. And, yeah, this place is pretty famous in Korea.
Yeah.
It's pretty much every K-pop person, every K-drama person you know has been there. And another thing we wanted to do is we didn't want to sort of Koreanize it too much. There's some lessons to that, right? Sometimes we wanted to do it our way, which I mentioned before with the tech company. Sometimes doing that too much doesn't work.
Yeah.
But here we want to do things our way in terms of, like if you go to a Korean restaurant and a famous person comes, most likely the owner will take a picture with that person, blow it up, put it up on the wall with their signature, and you have a wall of fame kind of thing. We didn't want to do that. So famous people, let's see, like JYP. You guys know JYP? He'd come, and at first he didn't have a reservation. We had 2-hour waits at the time, and we had a big waiting room of 50, 60 people who would just sit there and wait. And they said, "Well, I'm JYP. Do you have a reservation?" I said, "No." So 2-hour wait, right? Wonder Girls, Girls' Generation, J Park. Most of them were really cool. J Park got really angry. He pulled the whole "do you know who I am" kind of thing. I'm like, yes, we do. 2-hour wait, right? So we did that, and then most of the celebrities would go sit with the other people and sit there and wait for 1.5 hours, 2 hours to get a seat. And then people would see this, and like Jong-hwan, who is, I guess, the Madonna of Korea at the time, super famous, would sit there and wait 2 hours to get a table. And people would be like, "Oh my God, that's Jong-hwan." And that created even more buzz, I think. So we made an effort to do that. So things like that work. Some things that backfired, we wanted to do like an American style service. And what's good service? Checking up on the people all the time. Checking up on the table, and how's everything? Do you need anything else? Cleaning the table too, right? Mm-hmm. When we here in America, when we finish our dish, the server comes and, "Are you finished? Can I take the plate away?" And they clear the table. That's good service. If our table is full of empty bottles and empty plates and napkins piled up, we consider that bad service here in America. In Korea, it's the other way around, believe it or not. And we didn't realize why people were complaining. We taught all of our staff, clear the table, check on them, clear the table, take away the empty plates and all that. Mm-hmm. And then we started getting reviews online. They're like, "Yeah, they're trying to kick us out. They're really pushy. They're trying to," because in Korea, I'm sure you've seen some K-dramas where people go out and drink and all of the bottles are lined up at the table, right? They never take away the empty bottles. They're all lined up there. And so once we started taking away empty drinks and empty bottles and empty plates, Koreans felt like, "Hey, do you want me to leave? Are you pushing me out? Are you telling me to get out?" And so they didn't appreciate that at all. And so I'm like, oh my goodness. So those are some of the cultural things that you have to consider when doing a business. And mine are specifically F&B, but that can make or break you. Obviously for the tech company, I didn't understand the culture, the learning culture. So that broke that business pretty bad. And in F&B, but we were able to understand and catch these things and learn because we did live there for a while now. We made adjustments based on that.
So this restaurant was quite hot in 2014-15. You made a list on TripAdvisor. You got an article in Washington Post.
Yeah, Washington Post, New York Times came out and did an article. Fathers, CNN, basically everybody came out and did an article on us or a news program on us back then. So that's when I decided, okay, because if you guys know Asia or Korea, it's very fickle. Things move fast, especially compared to Western countries. And trends move really fast and then they die. So when we were hot, we were really hot. We were probably the most famous Western restaurant in all of Korea at the time. And I said to my partners, we need to expand. We need to expand because we don't know how long this is going to take. And so we had a few disagreements about where to expand. But I was more aggressive than my partners. My partners were very happy just having that one good restaurant. You know, everybody who knew who they were sort of celebrities, and they were making more money than they ever thought they could make. And so they were happy. But I knew that nothing lasts forever, and you have to strike when the iron is hot. So I wanted to expand. And that's when I was thinking about going abroad, because I think something like this would work in every metro area in Asia, right? In Hong Kong or Tokyo, there's a place, in Tokyo, there's the western section of Tokyo.
I remember.
Roppongi and Shinjuku, right? So it's very westernized. So I figured, hey, when we go in there, our restaurants, usually the foreigners came first, so the Korean Americans, they wanted legit Mexican food, so they came first. And as long as the foreigners come, then the locals will come later. So we could do that there. We could do it in Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, all these places, in Sydney, Australia. So I saw this vision of global dominance, right? And what sort of started that off was, what triggered that was, I remember one day in Itaewon, in our main, we had, I think, 3 or 4 restaurants at the time, but I was at the Itaewon main branch, and I noticed this older Caucasian gentleman would come every single day for 2 weeks. I was like, wow, he must really like tacos or miss tacos. And then one day he finally came up to me and said, oh, hey, are you the owner? And I said, yeah, I'm one of the owners. I'm like, well, you know what? I love your concept. I love your brand. You ever thought about opening abroad? And I said, yeah, sure. I think about it all the time. He said, well, how about Singapore? And I kind of lied because I wasn't thinking about Singapore. I'd never been there. And I said, yeah, sure, of course, why not? And he's like, well, can I have your name card? You know, I run a property there. Maybe we can talk about this. So I gave him my card. Didn't think anything of it because we were getting people coming in. I have a building here. I have a location there. And we didn't really consider. And so a couple of days later, he emails me and he says, hey, Sid, this is so-and-so, if you're really considering Singapore, I want to invite you here. You can stay at my property. I'll show you around. Best regards, George Tajsevich, President and CEO of Marina Bay Sands. Which is, I was like, what? Marina Bay Sands, I don't know if you know, it's like the iconic property in Singapore. So this guy, George T, is what I call him. He's the left-hand man of Sandy Adelson, right? Of the Sands Corporation. So he did all their global development. He built the Venetian in Macau. He built Marina Bay Sands. And I immediately Google, this guy, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, okay. So I emailed him back. I'm like, yes, I'd love to go. When can I go? So I went back. I flew out to Singapore. I got to stay at the Marina Bay Sands. He gave me a room there, and then he personally took me around and gave me a tour of the entire establishment, the hotel upstairs and the observation deck, the infinity pool, the convention center, the casino. The place is huge. It's a humongous development. Took me back to the VVIP $1 million baccarat hand tables, and then he showed me everywhere, and he took me to dinner and wine and dine me, and I'm sitting there eating, going, why in the world is this guy wining and dining a guy from Korea that sells tacos? I was like, it makes no sense. He has this massive complex that he's running. But
It's really like Mexican food.
yeah, he really did. He really did. He went there every day, but he loved the vibe. But he had this vision of, because this Marina Bay Sands at the time was only, I think, 3 years old, 2 or 3 years old. And it wasn't as popular as it is now. One side of the mall was kind of dead, and he had a vision of making that into sort of the casual dining space. So he had a bunch of Michelin star restaurants and celebrity chefs.
It's a nice place. I've been there.
Yeah, and he had all kinds of of fancy restaurants there, right next to Chanel and Hermes and Louis Vuitton. And he wanted to transform this to a sort of casual dining place, a hipper place, and wanted us to be the anchor. And but I looked around and I said, you know, this is not our vibe. Right? This is not who we are, and we wouldn't fit. I kind of regret that now, but at the time, that was the right decision. And I met up some friends in Singapore who were living there, and they took me to some really sort of trendy and happening places like Clark Quay and Club Street and other areas that are just really bustling with nightlife and dining.
This is one picture of your Singapore location.
Yeah, that's the original Singapore location. And so I thought, wow, Singapore's great. I'm going to expand to here. This is going to be our first global spot. But I didn't open it really made sense. But he was a catalyst for that.
Yeah.
So then I was, through my friends, was able to find a partner. I actually knew that I wouldn't be able to live there and run the place myself, so we were looking for a joint venture type of structure, and asked my friends to ask some F&B groups, introduce me, and so I met with maybe 5 or 6, I think, and I picked one that, and this is another problem, when you're so gung-ho with expansion, you're so excited because you've built your baby, you know, and it's doing well domestically. So what's the obvious next step? Oh, we're gonna conquer Canada, Mexico, Europe, and Asia. That's what you want to do, right? And I was in that sort of mode. And I really wanted to expand to Singapore. And I chose a partner that on paper was perfect. They were a lifestyle company. On paper, they ran whatever, a dozen bars and restaurants and nightclubs. And I remember my first meeting with them. I got off the airport at 12 o'clock at midnight. With my carry-on, hopped in a cab, and went to go meet them at one of their nightclubs. So I went straight in a nightclub at 1 o'clock in the morning with my carry-on, and it was just, I was blinded with the bling bling, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are ballers. I need to work with these guys. They really know what's happening. They're bringing out Dom Perignon and, you know, $600 bottles of whatever, and they're just having a lot of fun. And like, yeah, this is how we do it big time here. Just blinded by this. Hook, line, and sinker. Like, okay, these guys are the ones. And so we
that's
signed.
how you don't find that.
Yeah, don't find it that way. Didn't do my due diligence. You know, I was just so excited. And then I went to Singapore. So the whole plan was to be there for about 6 months, help them open this up, train everybody, and then hand it over to them. And I go back to Korea or go to the next country. That was my dream, to go from country to country and set it up and create this network. But then after 2 weeks of being there and working with these guys, I realized, oh my goodness, they didn't know anything. They had no idea what they were doing. I had to apply for my own visa because they've never done that before. I had to find my own suppliers. I had to deal with the contractors myself. And luckily, because they were just nightlife people, and it turns out they were just the marketing arm. No offense to the marketing majors here, but you know, they sold the clubs, they sold the tables, they marketed the clubs and the restaurants and things like that. They didn't operate. Yeah. So they knew nothing about F&B operations. And I'm like, oh my goodness, did I make a humongous mistake? All the money was in. We were 50-50. You know, we put in like, I think at the time, like 600 or 700K. They put in 600 or 700K. And there was no going back, right? Again, money. Once you put that money in, you know, there's no going back. So then we started this, and then I realized these guys, you know, they really don't know what they're doing. And luckily with Singapore, because everything's in English, English is the official language there. If we had done it in Tokyo or Hong Kong, then we would have just, you know, been a write-off, because I wouldn't have been able to do it myself. I couldn't navigate the laws and, you know, the permits and the licensing and any of those things, government regulations. But it took a while, and there was a lot of trial and error, obviously, because I didn't know the system or the culture, but somehow was able to forge through it and do it on my own. I did everything on my own.
How long were you there?
So I ended up being there for 10 years. The timeline kept growing and growing. I was supposed to be there for 6 months, and then after I kicked out my partners and bought back their shares.
Oh, you did that, okay.
Yeah, because it was our first global expansion. We did not want it to fail.
Right.
Everybody in Korea knew it was in the news, right?
Yeah.
That we were expanding. We couldn't let it die before it opened. So I said, okay, I'll stay in Singapore for a year or two, get this off the ground, train everybody, and let it run by itself. And then I realized that was impossible with the system there. And I also thought, on a positive note, that Singapore is the center of APAC, Asia Pacific. You know, if you go look at any headquarter for any major company, you are all in Singapore. For a variety of reasons, but mostly tax, but a variety of reasons. But you know, Google, Meta, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, HP, even Yum Brands is there. And they have no Taco Bells and only a couple of KFCs, right?
Yeah.
And they don't even have that many stores there, but their headquarters is in Singapore. So I said, hey, you know, if I'm gonna expand throughout Asia, what better place than Singapore? So then I decided to stay.
When did you bring your family?
A year later.
Yeah.
So my wife, who's here now, had a really good career in entertainment finance. She worked for Warner Brothers for 17 years, worked for DreamWorks Animation, NBC Universal, doing really well. And I made her quit her job to come be my CFO and sell tacos. I'm still kind of paying for that decision, but no, so it was, she moved out there and we worked on the business together for the last 10 years.
Okay, good. All right, so, let's quickly go. So you started the operation in Singapore, and then how did you set up the other restaurants in the?
Well, the goal of opening in Singapore was to expand, right? Not to just open Singapore. Singapore, you guys might know, is a very small country. It's tiny. You can drive from one side of the country to the next in 45 minutes, right? And so we knew that there wasn't much scale in Singapore, but you need to have Singapore to be that showcase for the other countries. People from Thailand or Indonesia or
like
or Philippines. They come to Singapore and they see this hot brand in Singapore. Oh, we can open that somewhere else. And so, you know, once Singapore stabilized, and it was doing really well, Singapore was doing very well. We opened up another brand called Urban Mix, which is a build-your-own salad rice bowl place. That was doing really, really well. That was very scalable too. And that's an interesting, so that's also sort of a combination of cultures. If you go to a salad bar, you're all familiar with salad bars. I've tried to go on a million salad bar diets, and go to the salad bar for 2 days, and I'm like, oh, I can't eat this anymore. I need something to satiate me. I need to feel like I had a meal. And so what I did is introduced rice and like really good proteins, barbecue pulled pork and Korean pork belly and things like that. So our motto is as healthy as you want to be. And so you have a form and you come and we have the bases. You can get, you can get a mesclun salad, you can get baby spinach, and you can get romaine, you can get really healthy stuff, right? Or if you want, you can get white rice, you can get brown rice, you can get kimchi fried rice, you can get Mexican rice, you can get mashed sweet potatoes, you can get anything you want, right? So, and I noticed that like a lot of Asians who would come, Singaporeans and Koreans and Asians, or let me start with foreigners, expats who would come from Europe or Australia or the United States, they would order a salad. They would get the baby spinach and romaine. They would put edamame and charred broccoli and carrots, shredded carrots, and then they would look and they'd go, throw that pulled pork on there. They'd have pulled pork on a salad, right? And they would eat it, and they feel like they've had a meal. They had they feel good about themselves because they had a salad, but they also had pulled pork. So they feel like full. Asians were the exact opposite. They would order rice and put a bunch of vegetables on top and eat it, and they would feel satiated because they had a bowl of rice, but they felt like they ate healthy. Oh, I ate really healthy today, even though they had 400 calories and 60 carbs of rice. So it's kind of funny how the two different cultures do that. And another reason why I wanted to do this is because in Southeast Asian culture, there's already this sort of template, the way of this format called mixed rice. And I don't know if you've been to Malaysia or to Indonesia, but you go and you order full rice, and then in a window or behind a glass pane, they have different types of curry, they have different types of chicken, they have different types of vegetables, different types of samba. And you go, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. So they're used to that. In Korea, they don't. Korea, you just order what's on the menu, right? You don't mix and match. So we thought this concept would do well, and it did really well there. So I opened those two, and then I opened Manila because somebody came to Vatos. Same thing, just like George from Marina Bay Sands, and she loved it, and she contacted me out of the blue and said, hey, I own property in Manila. Would you mind opening there? Would you think about opening there? And at that time, to be honest, Manila was not at the top of my list of hot and sexy places to go next, right? I wanted to go to Hong Kong or Tokyo or someplace like that. But then I also learned, I want to expand to all of these areas anyway, and I will eventually go to the Philippines. The partner is the most important thing, right? As I found out from my partnership in Singapore, which is a total disaster, I thought I really need to pick the right partner. And she was from one of the wealthier families in the Philippines. She had already had experience in F&B. She owned maybe like 4 or 5 Jollibees, and she owned Pepper Lunch, which is a big chain in Asia, Dome Cafe, so she had the F&B experience. Obviously had the infrastructure, right? And she was just a good person, a trustworthy person. So I said, let's do it. So we did it, and we opened in 2018.
I know some people probably have to go around 6:30, some classes and stuff. And feel free if you need to go at 6:30. The rest of you can stay maybe another 15 minutes after that. But let's focus on certain business lessons. So obviously, one you just mentioned, finding a good partner, especially in a different country. Right?
Yes.
Very, very important.
Very important.
Yeah. Could you expand on that just a little bit?
The most important.
Okay.
I think because there are so many things that you just don't know. You can't learn in a book. You do market research. Like it's kind of funny because I've opened in Indonesia and Manila and Korea and Philippines and Singapore, 4 different countries, and I came back to the United States and everyone was like, oh, it'll be easy for you to open businesses and restaurants here because you're from the United States. That could be the furthest from the truth. I've been here, 8 months now, and I've been learning as much as I can, but it's so different from what I've learned in Asia. And things are done so much more differently and more complex here, very complicated, the permitting and the licensing and the government regulations. So, wherever you go, you have to learn, there's so many things that you have to learn ahead of time and ask questions about. But still, unless you're on the ground, you still don't know. I probably, because I wanted to bring a couple of my brands here, I've probably gone to 20 different locations, scouting locations, met with scores of different F&B people, owners, and former employees who work here, and people in the industry. I've gone to at least 3 or 4 conferences to meet people, even in the third party or tertiary area, because the POS systems are different, the reservation systems are different, the delivery systems are different, the back-end systems are different, right? Accounting, finance software, all different. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can. And I've been going around and doing that for 6 months, and I still don't know, right? I still don't know all the ins and outs of running a restaurant here in the United States, right?
Yeah.
But imagine that in Bali, right? Bali was interesting, right? So
I think of a Bali picture. This one's Bali. Right?
yeah, that's Bali. So we opened the Vatos in Bali. I have a rooftop bar called Alta too. And I went to Bali every month for 2 years before I opened. Because I told myself I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I'm going to learn everything before I open now. 2 years I went, every single month. And I stayed for a week or two every time. And I went to every restaurant there was. I met with every F&B operator there was.
Luckily, it's a nice location to visit.
Yeah, yeah. The first 3 or 4 visits was fun, but after that, believe it or not, I'm like, oh man, I gotta go Bali again.
Yeah.
So, go Bali again. When it's work, everything becomes kind of mundane. But I mean, Bali is a beautiful place. It's a little overdeveloped now, but it's still a great place.
Yeah.
But I still didn't know until I actually ran the business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why if you're gonna partner with somebody, you need to partner with somebody who's been there, done that, and has the expertise.
Mm-hmm.
So my partner, again, I made the mistake of partnering with a property development company.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I partnered with them is they just built a brand new hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted me to come into their hotel, and they would be partners with me. Awesome, and it's right in Canggu, Bali, a hot space, right next to Alta and Finn's beach club, the 2 biggest beach clubs in Asia. Like, this is no brainer, which is the worst phrase that you could ever use. Is a no-brainer. I've used that so many times in failed projects.
Yeah.
Every time, oh man, this is perfect, this is no brainer, and then it's the kiss of death. So anyway, the property development, I'm like, oh, location is key, right? So what better way to get into this market than with this massive property developer? They own so much property in Bali, and then I can expand all over the place in Bali. But in terms of running a restaurant, they had no clue, right? No,
They weren't much help.
yeah, they weren't helping. So I had to go in there and do it all again myself, right? Which was not, my bandwidth is only so wide,
Yeah.
right? And still, I didn't know until I went through it. So for example, like for my visa to just go there and work, it took 4 months to get my visa. And it's just that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were incorporating company and figuring out the corporate structure, I had researched just the regular corporate structure and incorporation process in Indonesia. But if you have over 10% foreign ownership, there's a completely different type of corporation you have to make, right? And I didn't know that as well. And the requirements for this one is way above the requirements for a regular corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And we had already decided to do this, signed the MOU, the shareholder agreement, figured out the budget, and it was gonna cost, what, $700,000 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But to establish this corporation, you need $1 million minimum capital, right, for a foreign corporation. So, okay, we have to put in $150,000 extra each for no reason. Yeah. And it cost me $150K, which I needed elsewhere. So, I mean, just things like that, because my partners think that, oh, this is a given, this is how things are done. They don't bother to explain to you, because to them, it's just, this is the way it is, right? So they don't understand that I might not know. And in Singapore was the same thing. I remember in our opening night, we invited friends and family, it was packed, there's people everywhere. And the kitchen was crazy. I was in the kitchen, running the kitchen on the pass line, and it's around 7 o'clock at night. Orders are coming in, things are going crazy, and I'm yelling out orders, and usually they're supposed to yell back, for this or for that, or yes, chef. And no one's answering. I'm like looking back, and half my kitchen is gone. I'm like, what the heck? Where is everybody? Where's everybody? Why are they going on a breakdown? They're like, oh. So if you don't know, Singapore is mostly 70% is Chinese ethnicity, and about 25% is Malay, and Malay are Muslim. And at that time it was Ramadan. My Chinese staff were looking at me going, it's Ramadan. And I look at them like, so what? Right? What does that have to do with them leaving? And they are not explaining it to me because it's such a given thing in Singapore. Ramadan, people break fast at sunset. And to break fast, they go outside, they pray, and they eat. Right? So at 7 o'clock during Ramadan, all Muslims break fast. And that's just a given for Singapore, but I had no idea, right? And those things, you don't come up, when you come up with the questions to ask your partner when you're expanding, those are not the questions you probably think of. You ask, okay, what's the minimum capital? What is the overhead? What are the utilities like?
When do they take a break?
That's it.
That's that question.
Right. What are the salaries like? Blah blah blah. those are the things that you ask. You don't say, hey, is there a religion that some of your staff might have that will affect the operations of the restaurant? You only think of those things when it hits you when you're there. You know, in Bali, the same thing. Bali, oh my goodness, Bali, in Bali, they have ceremonies depending on the village or the neighborhood you're in. And the ceremonies are all different types, all different reasons. And so when you have staff there, it's not a unifying thing like you're off at Christmas or you're off during Hanukkah, right?
Yeah.
Certain staff will leave for a week to go back to their hometown and do these ceremonies. And you can't mark it on your calendar. You just walk in and you say 3 people are gone. Like, where are they? Ceremony. And you can't stop that either. Obviously, you don't want to stop that, but it's something you can't even plan for, right? Because even my HR staff doesn't even know when their particular ceremonies are, but you have to let them go. So these sort of challenges, you can kind of only realize when you go through it. And you know, right now, Eggslut, you guys know Eggslut, right? Doing really well, expanding everywhere. They expanded to Singapore a couple of years ago. And they opened, I think, 2 or 3 in Singapore. When they came in, I knew right away, oh, these guys are not going to do well. Why would they not do well? It's a major brand, famous brand from the US, they're on TV and all this stuff. Because what do Asians eat for breakfast? Do they eat egg sandwiches? No, they eat noodles. And they eat congee, right? And they eat rice. They don't eat egg sandwiches, right? Most people in Asia, they don't eat egg sandwiches. So you don't have that customer base enough to come back every day to eat an egg sandwich. Like here you do. I can eat an egg sandwich every day in the United States, and probably a lot of. Same thing with Mexican food. You know, in Korea, luckily we had enough people there. The population is so dense that we have enough people to come. But you know, Americans or Mexicans or even me, Korean American here, I can eat Mexican food 3 times a day, 3 times a week, right? At least, or even 4 times a week, no problem. Tacos, burritos, quesadillas. But most Koreans will eat it once every 6 months for a special occasion, for a date, for a going away party, for somebody's birthday. They don't eat it every day, right? So then you have to be in a place where there's a dense enough population where you can market to new clients, new customers, and have new customers keep coming back once every 3 to 6 months. So Eggslut closed in 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, they closed all of their outlets and left.
So the lot of issues with cultures. If you think about restaurants, right? Every country, different religions, different culture, different laws, different work habits. So many things that you have to deal with, right? Were there any examples where maybe somehow you did something really well, like you understood the culture and you did something, actually, you can talk about all the things you did wrong, but all the things you did well,
A lot of things I did wrong.
that maybe helped your business?
Yeah, well, when we went to Singapore, so before going to Singapore, I was talking a lot with a company in Indonesia as well, a big F&B company. And they wanted us to open there in Jakarta. And things went really well. We're about to sign the deal, and they even have a location in the mall. And but they put dropped one very important criteria on me in the last minute. And they said, oh, it needs to be halal, so no pork. Right? 90% of our menu is pork. 80% is pork, right? Carnitas and pork belly, and I'm like, okay, no pork. He's like, I mean, we can add other things. We can add chicken, we can add vegetarian options, but he's like, no, it needs to be no pork. And so that, I'm like, I stuck to my guns and said, no, that's not possible. We won't be able to do that. So the deal didn't go through. And then in Singapore, also again, a Muslim population, we didn't go halal and we didn't get rid of pork, but we catered to a lot of different palates and different requirements. There are a lot of Buddhists there, they don't eat beef, right? There are a lot of Muslims, they don't eat pork. There are a lot of Indians, they're vegetarian. Yeah, so it's a very diverse population in Singapore. So we expanded our menu quite a bit. So if we had a pork version of something, we made a chicken and vegetarian version, right? If we had a beef version of something, we made a pork version. So we literally had beef, pork, veggie, vegan, and then there are some really strict Buddhists who won't take onions and garlic. So we made hot sauce without onions and garlic. I mean, you have to do what you got to do. So I guess the fine line then is the balance is how do you, and I get asked this question a lot, and I also struggle with this question a lot too, is how do you find the right balance between sticking with your own values and mission in whatever business it happens to be, whether it's tech, like I stuck with my values and that didn't work, whether it's F&B, whether it's anything, any kind of business. If you're going to a different culture with different religions and different ethnicities, how much of it do you want to localize? And there has to be a little bit of localization there too. But then if you localize too much, then what happened to your heritage? You know, that's kind of gone too. Your actual mission and vision from before is gone. Your identity is gone. So that balance is very important. And I can't give you a formula for that. I can't say, oh, it's 80% this and 20% that. You just have to go there and find out what works for you in that business. But you have to be prepared to make that adjustment, right? Stick to your principles and your values and the core business, but you have to be able to also cater to that local market a little bit, I think.
So there are a lot of really useful international business lessons we discussed. Let's talk about a little bit about entrepreneurship. And by the way, if you guys have any questions, think of some questions because I'll open up for questions after this, okay? So you had to face a lot of ups and downs.
Yes.
And we haven't even talked about COVID yet. So you have your restaurant business in different countries. And you didn't have that, what's that program we had, PP, whatever?
No.
Yeah, you don't have any of that. Nope. So how do you deal with ups and downs and challenges? What kind of mentality do you need? What kind of resilience do you need?
Well, if you want to go into F&B, my advice to you is don't. That'll solve all your problems.
Yeah.
But I mean, some people, they just have a passion for it. They love cooking, they love food, you know. And for me, I love cooking, I love food, and presenting your food to your customers and then giving you good feedback. That's just, that kind of feedback is so rewarding. But having said that, the margins are really small. You have to be able to have full control of your entire business. So an issue with F&B is a lot of people who start a small restaurant or a bar or a cafe or whatever, they don't see it as a full business. They see it as, oh, this is my little shop and I'm gonna take care of it. They don't do full accounting, for example. They don't look at your cost of goods, which is really important, your COGS. They don't keep track of the recipes and the changes. And now the great thing is there are so many third-party platforms for that. And now using AI, which makes it even easier. So you can keep track of all of those metrics, and it's so important to keep track of because back in the day, we saw food come in and we used it all and then we ordered more, right? And then we ordered too much and it spoiled and we threw it away. And at the end of the month, we have our P&L, and if our COGS were under 30%, we're like, oh, okay, it's good enough. That's how we did it. You can't do it that way anymore because the margins are getting smaller because rents are going up, inflation's going up, manpower, personnel is going up, right? Salaries are going up, competition is getting greater. So I think managing those costs as much as possible without, I'm not saying cut your manpower, cut your staff, that's not what I mean. But you can schedule them really well now with these scheduling, AI-enabled scheduling software, where it will look at your peak times, your peak sales, and be able to put the staff in where they're needed. Because a lot of times, we had 5 staff putting their thumbs at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when they're not needed, right? So those kind of things. And now, I met with a guy who does this forecasting software. So they have enabled AI to forecast your sales weeks down the line. And they don't just look at your historicals either. Of course, they look at your historical data, But then what they'll do is they'll look at everything around you. Were there any events in your neighborhood? Is it school vacation? Is it a holiday? Is it, you know, all of these different, what's the weather gonna be like? Is rain forecasted? So with this, they're able to spit out data to you and say, hey, you should order this amount of milk next Thursday, right? And so there's less waste. Because the problem with F&B is everything is perishable, you know? So those cut goods, if you don't use them and sell them, then that's just, you know.
Let's go back to the question. So let's say COVID happens, or something bad happens. So how do you deal with that kind of situation personally as an entrepreneur?
Oh my goodness, COVID was a disaster. Pandemic. Nobody expected it to be as long as it went.
Yeah.
And trying to deal with it in three different countries with three different laws and governments treating it differently was also difficult. We were lucky in Singapore in that, well, unlucky in that it was very sort of draconian there. They locked down everything, and you couldn't even visit your grandma's house. You know, you couldn't go outside. And in Korea, they were a little bit more lax about that. One of my restaurants in Singapore was in a park, a small park, and right next door was a huge commercial building, and they had closed down all the restaurants, and they were only open for takeaway or delivery. And literally, my restaurant was 10 feet to the commercial building, but literally we're in a tiny little park. People started gathering in the national parks when they were not supposed to, and so the government shut down all national parks, including my park, which means I had to shut down. So they called me that morning and said, you need to shut down by 2 o'clock this afternoon. No delivery, no takeaway, anything. So anyway, that's beside the point, but still. I guess it's about how fast you move, how fast you can shift, how nimble you are. And at that time, we weren't very nimble, but I think we moved a little bit faster than other F&B. And I think that's because, thanks to my wife, we had good financial forecasting. Compared to other restaurants, we had a pretty good runway because we were saving up, and up until this point, we expanded all on our own balance sheet, right? We reinvested our earnings. We had no debt. We had no outside investors except for a few friends and family. And I would suggest, I know a lot of people suggest this, if you're starting a new business, a new project, first of all, don't give up equity, don't give up control, don't take on too much debt, right? Try to do it yourself, bootstrap yourself as much as possible before getting that external funding. Once external funding comes in, the whole atmosphere changes, everything changes. You have a board, you have corporate governance, you have all of these things. Not that we didn't run a tight ship before that, but we did. So we had enough cash, and we were able to get a government subsidized bridge loan to last. This was a little bit later, but we thought, we have enough to last 6 months, which in F&B terms, 6-month runway with no revenue is an eternity, right? Yeah. Most F&B, we're thinking, oh, next month, we're going month to month. So we had like a 6-month cash reserve, so we're like, okay, we're good. We'll ride this out. And then 1 month turned into 2, and 2 turned into 3, and we're like, oh, we're still good, you know what this means? The competition's gonna die, and we'll be the last man standing, and we'll be even more popular when things open up again. Then it became 6 months, and now we're in trouble. Like, oh my goodness, what do we do? And then we were able to get that bridge loan. We were very nimble then. We closed down our big restaurant completely, moved the staff over to a small one where we can do delivery only, island-wide delivery and takeaway. We did a lot of really interesting things. We started offering like build your own tacos at home, like a party pack. We had margaritas in a pouch. Yeah, so we sold margaritas in a sous vide pouch, you know, and you can do takeaway with margaritas in a pouch.
But during this time, like, are you hopeful? Are you depressed?
We're both.
Are you drinking a lot of evening?
Yeah. You know how much alcohol sales? So the only F&B that did well, my friend used to own this shop called Drink Spell, beer. It's a beer importer and distributor, Drinks Fellas. Not Drinks Fellas. Oh shoot, I forgot the name. But anyway,
Yeah.
so he sold beer to all the restaurants, and obviously that business died down. So he opened up an online beer delivery shop, which in Singapore is legal, and that blew up.
Yeah.
He didn't have enough beer in stock to sell to all the people who were drinking at home. Wine, beer, whiskey blew up in Singapore, right?
I drank
and
a
made
lot.
so much money. Yeah.
Okay, questions from the audience. What question is it? Again. Go ahead, Jesse. And then.
First of all, thank you, Sid, for coming. How did
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. How do you think your experience in education has impacted your business?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, so again, academia and the business world are very, very different. And I think nothing beats real world experience. Even I'm sure entrepreneurship program is a great program. It's gonna arm you with the weapons you need to get out there. But again, until you actually do the real thing, you know, it's a big difference. And I think in the beginning, education sort of hurt me, like I said, with the tech company, because I did my research and I knew the pedagogy and I knew what type of learning worked and was effective, and this is what people need to do. And so I was very stubborn, very arrogant actually, in trying to push that business model, and it just didn't work. The population didn't want to accept that, right? However, later on, I think it helped a lot in that because I was sort of research focused, you know, in PhD you have to do a lot of research, look through all of the literature in that specific industry or area. So now I'm more, and especially with my experience, my earlier experiences, I want to research and learn about any particular field, any particular business, any particular area as much as possible before I pull any trigger, right? Before, you know, if you talked to me 10 years ago and there was an opportunity, I'd take it. You know, I was worried about details later. This is a great opportunity. You know, I want to go to Vegas. I want to open a big. I almost did. Luckily, so that same person, George T, when I called him, he said, hey, you know, I said, hey, you know, I want to open in Vegas now. I'm ready to come back to the U.S. and go to the next level and make it big. And you know, he just called up the people at the Sands, and I'm getting phone calls from the VP, you know, of the Venetian, and I went there, and then I signed an LOI for a 10,000 square foot space at the Venetian Palazzo. This was in fall of 1999. 2019.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were supposed to sign the lease in May of 2020. And so, yeah, so that's when the pandemic saved me. Because I would
If you had done it in
that would have taken
January,
down the
yeah.
entire company, because that was huge. It was 10,000 square feet. It was like an $8 million project, right?
Yeah.
And if I would have signed that lease, you never know with all of the support that people got here in the United States. But yeah, but now from those experiences, like here, you know, I want to open up a restaurant, one of my brands here, a couple of my brands here, but I'm not going to do it until I know every little detail about every permit and every regulation. And HR is scary because, you know, everybody sues everybody in America, right? Litigation happy here. So you got to make sure all of the contracts and everything's, you know, T's are dotted and I's are, T's are crossed, I's are dotted, right? So yeah, before I do any of that here, I'm going to make sure I learn as much as possible.
I want to make sure our students get out in a few 5
Sure.
minutes. But okay, you have a question, then Nina after that.
Okay, so luck plays a big role in entrepreneurship.
Oh, of course.
As well. There's luck, just blind luck, network luck, hard work luck. What was one of your luckiest moments, and what actions have you taken to create luck in your situation?
Oh, create luck. So the pandemic happening before I signed the lease, that was luck. Otherwise, I'd been living in my parents' garage 5 years ago, probably. But I think we were lucky in Korea as well when we opened Vatos. Itaewon, the area that we opened in, was known as a foreigner neighborhood. It's right next to the U.S. Army base, the largest one in Korea. And so a lot of soldiers. So it was not the nicest neighborhood, a lot of sort of soldier bars and things like that, but it was gentrifying at the time. And we went in there right when it was gentrifying, so people started coming to Itaewon. If they didn't go abroad, they would go there to experience what going abroad was like, because there are a lot of foreigners there. And then people started opening, a Peruvian guy opened up his own legit Peruvian restaurant. You know, a Hungarian guy opened up a Hungarian restaurant. You know, then you have Americans opening up like a SoCal, LA style taco joint. And so you have sort of this authenticness at Itaewon, and then Itaewon blew up. It became a super popular place. So I think we got in at the right time with the right concept, and that sort of helped us. And we realized we were really lucky, because if we would open in another part of the city, we wouldn't have done as well, or in another country at the same time. Timing is also very, very important. And I think to make our own luck, I mean, it's hard to make your own luck, but again, going back to doing your own research or due diligence, and again, working with a partner or meeting consultants or advisors or whoever who really knows that market inside and out, or that field inside or out, is I can't stress it enough. It's the most important thing, because I went in thinking this partner in Singapore knows what they're doing, they don't know anything, and now I'm stuck there learning it myself. I went into Bali thinking, oh, my partners are property developers, they're natives of Bali, they must know everything about doing business here, they don't know anything about F&B, right? The only good experience I had was in the Philippines with my partner there. So I think you can make your own luck by doing your research and looking for the right timing and the right opportunity. So just because an opportunity pops up, don't just jump on it because it's like, oh, I might never, that's the thing, the fear that it might never happen again. You might let it go, right? But there's gonna be another opportunity. There's gonna be another project.
Remember not to say no-brainer, you know?
Don't ever say no-brainer. You know?
It's never that.
Yeah.
Nina.
Okay, I have 3 questions, but I'll ask some of them later. The main one is, speaking of partners, and having attended some of the family business entrepreneurship conferences, how has working with your partner been, and how do you keep that like home life separate from work life? Like how have you made it work over the past
Yes, dear.
however many years?
Yes, dear. Yes, dear. Yes, dear.
So then she's the one who runs the company.
Well, actually, the thing is, I think there needs to be good synergy there. And the reason why I'm saying plan, research, is probably because of her. So she's in finance, right? And she wants to know what happens in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. That's her job, is to plan that all out. Whereas me is like, ooh, that looks cool, I want to go do that. Oh, that looks cool too, I want to go do that. Well, this is a great idea, I want to go do that. And I just kind of jump in there, right? And she kind of pulls me back and says, no. Let's think about this first, right? But again, you know, some people in just finance or who have never been in entrepreneurship, they're sort of risk averse. I'm not saying she's risk averse, but some people who have never had their own business, have worked in corporate all their lives, they have a safe, stable, you know, job, and they don't have to worry about their paycheck coming out. Well, until recently. But you know, it's a big step to risk that, give that all up, and put in your life savings or your family's life savings or whatever into this idea that hasn't been proven, right? So that's why I think we have a good synergy, is that she holds me back, I pull her forward, right? She's very strong in the back end. I'm kind of more sort of customer facing and in the kitchen kind of thing, IR sort of thing. So we complement each other very well. And it's weird, we have a really good relationship. So I think a lot of people might tell you it's like, oh, work is work and it stops there, and when you guys go home, you should not talk about work. But it's not. When it's your business, it's 24/7. So we talk about work all the time. At dinner, and when we're out, at home, on vacation. It's always constant. But somehow we've made it work, and we're still not at each other's throats, which is good. I can't give you the right answer. It's just that I think we're very compatible, and we understand each other, and we value each other's opinion. So I think that's very important, the communication part.
All right, in 1 minute, what are your current plans going forward?
Well, current plans, so I moved back to America about 7 months now, and end of February, beginning of March, and now I have all my businesses. I put in people in place, general managers, operating directors for all of them. My partner in Bali has taken over that. So everything is running well. And this is another piece of advice I'd like to give you is that sometimes you need a great team, you know, not sometimes, all the time you need a great team. And as an entrepreneur, especially when you're starting with a smaller project, you have a tendency to try to do everything yourself. You know, you're saying, oh, you know, I need to learn every part of this business. I need to do every part of this business. I need to fund every part of this business, you know. But you'll never grow. You'll never be sane if you do something like that. And there are people who are better than you at doing certain things. So now, you know, up until a year ago, I was still in the kitchen. I would go into Bali and make drinks. I would go to, you know, wherever, another outlet, and I would like wash dishes still, you know. And then I would prepare the board deck and have a board meeting. And then, you know, and I would have a meeting with the shareholders, and I would do all this high level stuff, C-suite stuff, and then the next day somebody didn't show up, I'd go run to this outlet and wash dishes for the night. And I thought, oh, I'm being, you know, a really good boss by doing that, showing these people that I'm in the trenches, right? But in the end, what happens is it's taking up your bandwidth that you could be using to grow the business further, to make it better, so everybody benefits from that. And now that I have people in place, I have maybe a bi-weekly managers meeting, bi-monthly shareholder board meeting, and that's it. And operations I've turned over to them, and I'm so stress-free now. It's amazing, right? But things are running great, and they're doing a better job of it because they have their job, their lane, so they can focus on that and do a really good job, much better than if I was spending 5% of my time trying to do this, you know? So the team is so important. Find good people, smart people that are good at what they do, and get a bunch of them together. And that segues into what I'm doing now. So I thought about that, and now I've started a consulting firm, Sage Partners. So, you know, I was thinking about, you know, sort of semi-retired, what am I gonna do? Yeah, and then my cousin, I noticed she's a property developer here. She's a general contractor. She has a real estate broker's license. She has a notary public license. And I just had lunch with her. I'm like, oh, tell me about the places you built and help. And she gave me a list of like 30 or 40 different companies. And I noticed a trend. A lot of them were from Korea, from Asia. So you might have heard of Paris Baguette. She opened up 19 of their outlets here, right? Tous les jours, Papa Rich from Malaysia, Mr. Pizza. I mean, the list goes on. And not just that, but she built Honey Bank, Bank of Hope, you know, all of these foreign brands that come here. And I'm like, so you just do the construction? No, I help them with permitting and licensing and architecture and blah, blah, blah. And so we decided to create this consulting firm together, end-to-end advisory, where we can bring Asian brands who want to expand to the US, even in this environment. They're still brands. And they can skip ahead of all of these issues that I had, right? And I can help them with cultural issues, right? Not just the business structure and things like that in construction. We can do it from permitting and licensing, which in the US, especially in California and LA, it takes months. I can see the size of this lecture hall, if it was completely empty with no plumbing, no electricity, no exhaust, I could build it into a fully functioning restaurant in 3 months and grand open in Singapore, Korea. Here, I can't even get the first permit in the first month, 3 months. You know, and I was meeting real estate agents, they said, oh yeah, great concept. If you're lucky, you can open in 2 years. I said, what? Right? So a lot of brands come, they try, they don't understand how things work here. They're undercapitalized, they run out of money and they leave, right? So that's what we're gonna try to help them with, end to end, and now we can do management, consulting, operations as well. So I've created a team, architecture, permitting, operations. I have a team now who's worked in Michelin star restaurants, back of the house, front of the house. I have an accounting firm that's worked with KFC and all the big names. So, you know, they're experts in their lane, and together we can create this whole. We can do what other firms can't do. So that's what I'm doing, and vice versa. U.S. brands who want to go into Asia. So that's what I'm doing.
So busy. All right.
It looks like. Let's give a big round of applause. Thanks everyone for joining this great event tonight. I'm sure that there are a lot of takeaways for you, but I think that for me personally, I think nothing's more important than people. He talks about finding the right partner, finding the good team, and even with this AI era, I think that the human being will become increasingly more important. So I can tell that I'm sure that he's willing to talk with some of you, after our event, and then probably he doesn't mind that if you ask him an email or whatever, that because he's such a nice guy. Okay, great. Thanks again, and we'll see you later for another event. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.